Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where Karens seem to think that they're the center of the universe and they can do what they want when they want. And in this episode, Opie tells a story about the time his Karen mom calls the cops on him, guys, because he wouldn't let her attack him. It's such a wild ride. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So since summer's here, swim lessons were happening at my rec center, and on this day in particular, I was there. And most lanes were blocked off by swimmers. I grabbed the last empty one and I start to swim. I was about 80% of the way done with my workout when a Karen and her 5-year-old walk to the pool area. The woman looks at the full pool and she decides to go for my lane. I guess she thought I'd be a soft target because I'm skinny and I look younger than I am. Karen goes to stand in front of my lane looking annoyed at me. And I think to myself, here we go again. I just continue swimming because I'm almost done. Every time I reach her side of the lane, she shouts for me to stop. I finally do when she throws the kickboard I was previously using, blocking my path. I bob up angrily and I ask her what she thinks she's doing. The Karen then proceeds to yell at me and she says, "I promised my son he could swim here today. The pool is full. Get out." I just reply with, honestly, I couldn't care less. This is the lane I'm using. She just ignores me and says, just move. I refused to move and instead resumed my swimming. When I reached her end again, she threw the kickboard again, this time hitting me in the forehead. I yelled out, "Ow, what the hell, lady?" And she got really mad at that. She bends over to scream an inch away from my face. The woman screams, "Don't use profanity in front of my child. Now get out of this pool right now. I know you're not letting me in because I'm a woman with a child." At that, I was like, whoa, lady. But this is where the fun began. Before I continue, I have no idea who this person was. It just looked like some random teenager who had enough of this woman. The teenager walks past Karen as her voice reaches 80 decibels and catches my eye. She then gives me a subtle nod and then proceeds to lightly push Karen. And Karen, who's already bending forward from screaming in my face, topples right into the pool. She was wearing a swimsuit, but it was still supremely satisfying to see the look of utter surprise on her face. In the end, no cops were called, just justice served by a friendly pedestrian, and the lifeguard took my side when Karen confronted him about it. Her son throughout this just sort of watched the whole time, but I hope he hasn't been corrupted by his mom. I hope so too, and with how entitled that woman was acting, with screaming in Opie's face, throwing a kickboard at their head, I think her getting pushed in the pool was totally fair game. And I'm actually surprised no cops were called at all, because you know how Karens love to overreact, right? But lesson totally learned that day. Hopefully mom learned to not make promises to her kid that she can't keep. Okay, so long story short, my grandparents are wealthy. My mother is very spoiled and self-centered because of it. Every single situation is somehow about her. My dad's side can't stand her because she sows chaos everywhere she goes. For example, my dad's side threw a birthday party for one of my cousins. The whole day was focused on a fight because my mom spends $8 on ingredients to make a lasagna to bring. This ruins the poor kid's birthday, and that's just one example. But this is every situation, every time. She's the center of everything. Her family is pretty wild. I've been present for multiple fistfights between her and her sisters. Every fight stems from someone getting more money than the other. One time, my mom got it bad enough that she had a phone cord wrapped around my aunt's neck. Although terrible, it was kind of impressive to be honest because my mom's a very small person. Anyways, despite my grandparents being ultra wealthy, I grew up pretty poor in the beginning. My mom got cut off for a few years due to something happening. I remember going to food banks for food and clothes were donations, etc. When things got better, my parents refused to spend any money on me. If I had clothes for school, it was because I got an outfit for Christmas. I mean, they were ridiculous about it. My grandfather, on my dad's side, tried to get custody of me due to neglect and alcoholism. As for the wealthy grandparents, now look, I'm not entitled. It's their money, but every grandchild except me got their college paid for, got a car, got a down payment on a house, and a wedding fully paid for. super generous. I was hurt that I got none of these things due to how my mom behaved. It felt personal. I felt it was their way of communicating that they loved me less, and that damaged our relationship. With that said, fast forward to this week. I'm engaged, and I wasn't expecting a big wedding. I was okay with eloping because money's tight. I figured my parents might want to do something since I'm their only kid, so I asked them what they wanted to do. Well, my mom was drunk because, it was 2 p.m. My mom then confesses that grandparents gave me $30,000 as a wedding gift and down payment on a house, but they had spent it all on vacations over the years. Hearing that, I was speechless. And then the next day, they non-stop pressured me into taking out a loan to take them on vacation and to have an extravagant wedding. I just refuse, and I say, you were given $30,000 to give me for a wedding and a down payment, but you decided vacations and cars were more important. The whole thing then gets turned into me being the bad guy. Poor her. Can you believe she won't get to plan a wedding with her daughter because her daughter won't take out a $40,000 loan? What a spoiled bitch. Now, I have relatives calling me up with this BS. They're under the impression that I'm being a diva. I just keep dodging the conversation, but I don't know how long I can do it. Once my relatives find out, there's no saving her reputation with them. Also, throughout all this, I also found out that I was treated equally as everyone else. My grandparents gave me money for college. The problem is, they gave it to my mom and she spent it on cars and luxury purses. It must have been a decent amount too, because my grandparents are under the impression that they paid for my college in full. And I'm at a loss. I haven't talked to my parents in like a week. It almost feels like they aren't my parents anymore. That bonding feeling, or whatever it is gone. I know they're my parents and I need to forgive them no matter what, but this is hard. I just want to say that honestly, OP does not have to forgive her parents. Like, just because they're your parents does not give them a full pass to do what they want. Especially blowing tens of thousands of dollars on themselves that was meant to be a gift for OP. Like, that I can't wrap my head around. Like, how can some parents be so selfish? And honestly, if I were in OP's shoes, I would be freaking livid, guys. Like, to think that you were an outcast all those years and that grandparents treated you poorly, to then finding out that they gave you money for everything. That is wild. And guys, here's the update. OP says, I didn't talk to my parents or any of my family much for a month. There was word going around that I blew all the money and that I was lying low until it all blew over. Then, when people started asking me about it, I was able to remain calm and say I was never offered any money. People really grilled me about where the money went. I never got emotional or defensive. I just said I was never offered any money. Maybe you should ask my mom about her BMW. So everyone knows. I was afraid they wouldn't believe me at first, but considering my parents were financially abusive in my younger years, it wasn't a far stretch. I really considered going no contact, but my husband talked me into going low contact. We've also both agreed that we will never give them any money or nice gifts, ever. We will do the bare minimum. As for my grandparents, this conflict is now between them and my parents. Again, everyone's fully aware and no one faults me. I am glad that OP was able to work it out with her relatives and that everyone's fully aware. But if I were OP, I'd be calling the grandparents up and telling them the whole story. And not because they might hand over some more money. Like, it's the fact that they deserve to know how crappy their daughter is. Again, it just makes me so mad, guys, how some parents will do anything for their kids. Like, they want to give their children the world. And then there are others who are like this, who don't give a care in the world about their kids' futures. Like, I'll just go spend it all on a new car or a luxury purse, instead of helping out my daughter and giving her a head start in life. Guys, let me know what you would do if you were in OP situation. I work at a movie theater, and I've got a lot of stories about entitled people. But this Karen mother in the story was terrible. She thought our movie theater was a free babysitting service. But believe it or not, stuff like this happened on a weekly basis with these types of customers, who act like the theater was their personal babysitting service, and they'll freak out when they can't find their child and blame us instead. Now, I'm not gonna go into depth on what these kids were doing, because I've posted other stories of what many of these kids do when they're dropped off. I'll just make a quick highlight of what led them to get kicked out. So the mom was with the kids to get the tickets, but instead of staying in their auditorium, they hop from one movie to another. We repeatedly get noise complaints about them just running around, so we decide to investigate and we catch the kids. They're then told to call their parents and leave, and all they say is, "We've called our parents and relatives to come pick us up." Whoever said they were coming to pick them up were taking their time picking them up. And now the kids are running amok in the lobby, still causing trouble, and they're trying to sneak back into other movies. At this point, we had enough. We kicked them out officially. And due to it being closing time, the doors are closed and we're cleaning up when I hear banging on the door. It's the kids, and they're asking, "Can I come wait inside?" I tell them, "Sorry, we're closed." The kids once again try to come inside, and they say, "But it's cold, and my parents aren't here yet." So the manager comes out and tells them, "There's a gas station across the parking lot that you can go wait at. Go there, we're closed." The kids keep knocking until security walks over. It was around midnight as this was happening. By the time my coworkers and I finished, it was pitch black. My ride was outside, and security was making sure that everyone got in their cars all right before heading back inside. I then see the teens just hanging out outside of the building around the far sides. I'm not sure how they got home since it's not my job to babysit them. The next day I'm at work. Oh boy, all hell breaks loose. A woman, Karen, comes into the theater and she loudly screams at security, "Why did you make my babies walk home in the dark? They could have been kidnapped." Security tells her, "Ma'am, we've had your teens call you repeatedly, but nobody responded and we were closing. They can't stay inside." She then keeps screaming and says, "So you're okay with letting little kids get kidnapped? How dare you? I'm gonna sue all of you and get all of you people fired." She said that before storming off and never appearing again. Again, we're a movie theater, not a free babysitting service. It's your own fault for not picking up your kids, and don't expect us to drop off your kids at home for you. Just come pick up your kids, Karen. Holy moly, the audacity of that woman to scream at the security guard about her kids getting kidnapped. But whose fault is that, Karen? Who lets their young kids stay out past midnight and run wild in a movie theater? And seriously, if they walked home, she was probably nowhere even close to coming to get her kids. And again, at midnight, where it's pitch black. Like, how dare you scream at staff about your children's safety when you're letting them do wild things like that, unsupervised? Okay, so I'll just say this. This is going to get pretty dark. And while there's some funny bits, it's more the whole situation that's bizarre/interesting. Also, this happened many years ago. I'm also okay, and I'm doing well now, so nobody worry. Now that we have that out of the way, time for some backstory. So my mother was only 17 years old when she had me. It was a whole cluster F of a mess. My mother wanted to rebel against her parents, so naturally, she dates a homeless guy. Now, not a junkie, just a guy who had some mental health problems and had his own rough life. Anyways, I pop out and my mom decides to keep me. Naturally, because she had me so young and gave me the pleasure of life, she felt like I owed her. She was vastly underprepared for the whole parenting thing. And I do have numerous stories about her and my eventual stepfather. But the gist of it is this woman is an angry drunk. I don't blame her for her behavior, I just wish she'd get better. Anyway, the night this happened, she'd been drinking pretty heavily, which was normal for my mother. I believe she had gotten into a fight with my stepdad and he'd gone out to drink. So naturally, her drunk frustration fell on us kids. And don't worry, we didn't get beat or anything. Mom was not one to get physical, she just yelled a lot. I, being the eldest and having dealt with this most of my life, pretty much saw it coming from a mile away. I had developed a kind of rhythm dealing with her. Again, she was never outright violent unless you rose to it and got into her face. And I'm a pretty passive person, so the worst she could do is slur vague insults and accusations at you, which I guess might have hurt more if she hadn't had a glass of wine spilled down her front. After she finished her second box of wine, and yes, we're a classy family as you can tell, I knew it would start pretty soon, so I began my routine of pacification. I tell my 11-year-old brother and my 7-year-old sister it's bedtime, and at that, Mom glares at me. My sister asked, "Can't I stay up 10 more minutes?" I tell her, "Nope, you have school tomorrow. You can finish watching your movie in the morning if you wake up early." My brother says, "Come on, let's go." Now, my brother knows what's going on. My sister hasn't seen her mom bad yet, and it's a rule of mine that I try to keep her bad side from them as long as I can. But my brother is not an idiot. He's heard the shouting before. Once they're settled, I come back down. And some of you may be questioning why. In my understanding of my mom's behavior, she gets more violent if you act fearful or superior. It's just best to be present and as passive as possible. If you don't move, you probably won't be hurt. More than anything, she just wants to vent. My mom's not horrible, she's just damaged. I know what's coming, and this is not the exact words, but it's always the same variations. Mom looks at me and says, "You think I'm pathetic, don't you?" I say to her, "I don't think you're anything, Mom." She then says, "That's an effing lie, I can see it in your eyes." I tell her, "No, I might not agree with what you do, but I understand why you do it." She then says to me, "You think you're so effing smart, don't you? You think you're the parent." I tell her, "One of us has to be, right?" And that was a mistake. My mom then throws something my way, and I flinch but don't move or back down. Like I said, I had a routine, but I am only 14 years old, and I can't help backtalk sometimes. The next thing she says is, "You are just like your father. You think you're smart playing your mind games, but I see you. I know what you're doing." He used to tell me so many beautiful stories, but that's all they were. Stories. Just like your stepfather, just like your grandfather, just like you. You're all the same. I respond, "The thing about stories, Mom, is that until they're printed in pen, they're not permanent unless you make them. If you're unhappy, then seek happiness." Now, in hindsight, I can see why this provoked her. In the moment, I was just trying to give my mom advice because I didn't want her to be sad. My mom then says, "There he effing goes. My little effing philosopher." She then picks up a nearby object and throws it at me, and I dodge it. She then keeps going on and says, "He can't keep his mouth shut for 5 effing minutes." Cue another object getting thrown at me. She then screams, "Stand still so I can hit you." I scream, "Mom." She then stops mid-throw, and I say, "Just stop, I can't do this." She then lowers her hand, and I think this is getting through to her. She starts to stumble forward with her hand out, and I stupidly think she's going for a hug. It turns out she's reaching for a statue on the side. My mom then grabs the statue, and I have a split second to react. So I do the only thing I could. I put my arms up to my face and throw myself backwards. There's broken glass and other stuff on the floor, but I figured I'd take my chances with that over having my head caved in. And you have to try to understand, it's never been this bad. This was a turning point in our relationship, and it's never been the same. And I'm also not trying to justify her behavior here. If I thought she was even close to being capable of something like this, I would have gotten social services or police involved a long time ago. So I fall backwards, and she falls with me. My hands knock her arms upward, and the heavy thing she's holding strikes her in the face. We then crash into stuff on the ground, and my bro comes sprinting downstairs. He's called Granddad, and he pulls me up. We then run upstairs, wake sister up, and we barricade ourselves in her room. Meanwhile, Mom's screaming bloody murder. She says, "Why would you do that to me? You hit me in the eye. I'm calling the police. They're finally going to come take you away. I'm tired of you." My brother at this point is on the phone with my granddad, and my granddad's on his way. Meanwhile, my mom's called 911, and she's on the phone with operators. I can hear her talking loudly, and she's crying, screaming, "Hello? I need police. My son just violently attacked me, and he's locked himself in my daughter's bedroom. I don't know what he's going to do. I think he might hurt her, so come arrest him right now." My brother through the door screams, "She's lying." And honestly, I never wanted my siblings to see her like this. Throughout the day, she was so kind and loving. And it's only later in life that we discovered she has bipolar disorder, and now she needs antipsychotic medicine. We speculated that this was an episode. My granddad arrived shortly after the police came, and they came to the bedroom door, and a female cop spoke to me. The cop says, "Hello, I'm Officer So-and-so. First off, I just want to make sure that everyone's okay in there." Now, it didn't occur to me at this point that it seemed like a hostage situation to them. So I replied, "My siblings are okay. I'm bleeding. I cut myself on glass when I fell." That's when cop number 2 says, "Mr. OP, I'm officer so-and-so. Are you able to move this barricade, as we need to assess your wounds and see if you need medical attention? There's an ambulance outside." I then ask, "Is my mom okay?" Cop 2 says, "We're treating her wounds right now, downstairs. We will take you to see her and clear this all up if you come out right now." I respond, "I don't want to see her. She attacked me. There's something wrong with her. She needs help." Cop 2 says, "According to her, you attacked her." The first cop immediately cuts him off, as she, along with probably most of you, had the common sense to realize that accusations aren't helpful in this situation. Cop 1 says, "Nobody's here to accuse anyone of anything just yet. We can see that there was a struggle downstairs, and we can tell from the logs that your siblings aren't afraid of you." That's when my brother screams and says, "Because he didn't do anything, he protected us. Mom's the bad guy." Cop number 1 responds to my brother and says, "Well, hello there. You must be brother. Your brother sounds very brave. Can you tell me how he's doing?" My brother says, "Not good. He's pale. He needs help, not questions." Cop number 1 tells him, "Okay, no more questions. Your granddad's here. If you open the door, we can take you to him." By this point, I've calmed down. I move the things we used to block the door and then open it. I fall into the policewoman's arms, and the cuts and bruises over my body make it very apparent to both of them that there was more to the story than what my mom said. My granddad then comes over and he scoops me up. He pushes the cops away, and I've never seen him look more afraid in his life. If human eyes had the expression for "I'm sorry," that's what I would call it. He then carried me to the ambulance and he laid me on the bed. He then went to my mom's ambulance where she was sitting, and he starts yelling at her. He just screams in her face and says, "You ever put those kids in danger again, I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. I don't give a damn if you think they deserve it. You're an adult. I raised you better." A lot has happened because of this, but since I've already written far too much, I'll briefly mention the rest. Number 1, my mother wasn't arrested. The kids protected her. My mom was awful, but we were young and she was our mom. Number 2, social services were involved to monitor us. We had a woman regularly visit us. She was nice. She often spent her own money to treat us, and she got me therapy. Number 3, the court ordered mom to start therapy, and this eventually led to her diagnosis. It's also worth noting that this is not the end. Everything was good for a bit until my stepfather got violent and my mom was forced to divorce him. My grandparents took over raising me, but they only had space for me at the time. After many years, each of her kids eventually suffered a similar fate to me. My brother moved in with my grandparents and they built an extension for him. My sister moved into a hostel when she turned 15. We're all doing okay now, and just to put some of your minds at ease, all the siblings no longer live with my mother. As I've mentioned, this was many years ago. My adorable sister is in her mid-20s now, and she's a glorified badass. My brother just bought his first house. My mother did seek psychological help, and she's also doing well. She has a new family now who she's had very little problems with. Everyone in the story, while at the time was in a very bad place, has successfully become better. None of us are 100%, but we are getting there. I also want to say that my mom's not an evil lady. She was the product of an unchecked illness, and she's doing much better now, so try to keep this in mind during your criticism of her. This story is my perspective and mine only, and you may think differently if you heard her full story. All I can say is I'm so glad things worked out well for OP, and that him and his siblings are in a much better place now. But what a terrifying experience, right? And I'm glad mom got help for her disorder, and she's now in a better place as well. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these wild stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where it's all about neighbors arguing property lines. Guys, it's such a funny episode, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.